Welcome back. So, today I want to talk about fitness in the grey area and why the desire for black and white outcomes is often what leads people astray and takes people further away from the goals that they have. So, over the years that I've been coaching people, everyone that has come to me in the different gyms I've had, they've always been an individual. I always see them as an individual, and any workout that they do, any approach we have with nutrition, and whilst there may be some fundamental principles that are quite similar between people, the exact implementation is different because everyone is different. So, the most appropriate diet for a 20-year-old male who struggles to put on weight is going to be significantly different than the appropriate diet for a 60-year-old who can't exercise a great deal anymore due to a lot of injuries and is trying to lose weight. Whilst there may be some level of overlap there, there's going to be a significant difference between those two. And even within that, both you could have 10 20-year-old guys who are all trying to put on weight, and they're all going to be eating different foods depending on what sort of foods they like, depending on what sort of foods their stomachs can take, depending on their schedule in life, and do they want to eat huge meals before work, after work, while they're at work? What snacks are they going to have? There's so many different implementations that can have the exact same outcome but look so different. And understanding all these different things is what I think makes fitness so difficult for most people, because they would much prefer there to be a single diet plan or a single workout plan that is going to effectively get the result for them. And there's going to be a certain portion of the population for whom a regular stock standard cookie cutter approach will work. But for the majority of people, they're going to have to effectively do a lot of trial and error with themselves, especially when they're starting out. And so you can basically, what we attempting to do is take a very well educated guess at the best approach to take, and then see how the body responds. And then as the body responds, we can further, take more educated guesses whilst understanding the broad principles of how the body works. And so when it comes to the scientific literature around the human body, when it comes to, movement, nutrition, health, and so on, if you actually understand it, you will see that it's very rare for scientists to make absolutist statements around how something works, and so people may have a certain ideology around their movement nutrition. But when we look at the actual scientific basis from it, it's very difficult because there's such variability to say that definitively something is good or bad. We look at something like salt intake, and someone who is genetically predisposed to blood pressure issues may find that a higher salt intake causes higher blood pressure. But then for people who don't have that issue, the salt intake doesn't impact their blood pressure anywhere near as much, if at all. We can find that some people who can have pretty significant amounts of carbohydrates without having huge problems with their blood sugar regulation, whereas other people can have relatively small amounts in comparison and have issues. And so the implementation for those people to get the same outcome is going to be very different. And so it's very difficult then to give a black and white answer to a lot of questions, because a lot of people, they go out into the internet, they see all the information that's out there, and they want an answer. They want a black and white, is this food good for me? Is this workout good for me? And without understanding you as a person, that is a very difficult question to answer, because whilst you may be able to say yes or no, and for someone who's just starting out, probably any workout program is going to be better than doing nothing. But in order to get the best outcome, you have to understand that there's going to be a big gray area. there's unlikely to be a very distinct black and white answer to a lot of the questions that you have, because it's going to depend on so many different things, and there's probably going to be more than one answer. Um, I could give a lot of people 20 or 30 or 50 different workout programs that would get them a result, and um, change those over time. And there's no real definitive answer from the outset as to which one is most appropriate, because a lot of that's going to be implementing some sort of program, seeing how that individual responds to that, seeing how their body responds to that training program, and then altering it over time. And so having a black and white approach, a cookie cutter approach, is what ends up causing people a lot of problems, because you're not the same as everyone else. You are an individual, and we're all individuals, and we have a lot of similarities, and there's quite a lot of principles to follow that will put you in the right direction, of course. If you follow certain nutrition guidelines, you're probably going to be in a much better place than you would be if you weren't following them. So, if you eat more fruit and vegetables, if you cut out liquid calories, if you reduce your portion sizes, if you don't have too many snacks, don't eat too much junk food, and reduce alcohol. If you do all those things, you're going to be putting yourself in a much, much better position than you probably are right now. But again, the implementation of how you exactly set up that sort of diet for you could look 100 different ways. And it doesn't mean that one of them is necessarily perfect and one of them's not. And so the black and white thinking of the fitness world means that we get a lot of people putting into camps. They're either for or against certain things, and they get very dogmatic in their approach. Whereas there's often a good reason to implement a lot of different things depending on the person. And so I'd rather have a lot of different tools in my tool belt to be able to implement on people, because some things work better for others. When we look at intermittent fasting, for example, something where you only eat for, depending on maybe a 6-hour window each day, works amazing for some people at weight loss and controlling the amount of food they're eating, works terribly for others. So if you would ask the question, is intermittent fasting good or bad? That's not a question that can be answered honestly, because it's good or bad in what context, good or bad for what person, good or bad for what situation. The nuance of fitness, health, nutrition is what makes it so difficult, and what makes it feel so out of reach for people, because they wish there was a simpler way. And unfortunately, there's really not. And if you can recognize this, then you can start to understand that it's more about an overall balance, and that you gradually step yourself in the right direction and make course corrections as you go, using educated guesses to further get you in the direction that you want to go. And then you can, over time, work out what works for you, work out what things are good and bad. And then over time, you often can answer that question. Is alcohol good or bad for me? Or is eating this food good or bad for me? If you're someone who really struggles with eating too much sugar, for example, then for you, the question, is sugar good or bad? Maybe it is bad for you. It's something that you can't control. So in your context, that question is bad. But again, for someone else, might not be that way. So when it comes to fitness, health, nutrition, understand that it's not black and white. There is a continuum, and there are many different ways to get an outcome. And so if you are not understanding something, then often it's from information overload, and it's from the desire to get a simple answer where there is no simple answer. So focus on those principles first, of course. Focus on the main things that are going to put you in the right direction, and then seek help where needed to ensure that you're getting the best outcome for you. So I hope that's been informative. I hope that's helped you understand a little bit more about fitness. If you have any specific questions you want answered, be sure to send me a message or leave a comment below.